Right now, somewhere in America, a kid is sitting in a classroom, staring at a clock, waiting for a bell to ring so they can move to the next room and stare at another clock. And if you're like most Americans, you did the exact same thing for 12 straight years of your life. You sat where they told you to sit, you learned what they told you to learn, you raised your hand to use the bathroom. And at the end of it all, you walked across a stage, grabbed a piece of paper, and got told you were ready for the real world. You weren't. The American public school system was not designed to educate you. It was designed to process you. And the paper trail proving that has been sitting in libraries for over 100 years. Nobody hid it. Nobody had to. They just knew most people would never go looking. Let's start with where this whole thing actually came from, because it didn't start in America. It started in Prussia. In the early 1800s, the Prussian government was dealing with a problem. They'd just gotten their boots kicked by Napoleon, and they needed to rebuild their military fast. So they engineered a school system from scratch, not to produce thinkers, not to produce leaders, but to produce obedient soldiers and factory workers who would follow orders without question, show up on time, and not cause problems. Sound familiar? It should, because America copy-pasted the whole thing. In the mid-1800s, American education reformers traveled to Prussia and came back absolutely hyped about what they saw. Horace Mann, the man most American textbooks call the father of public education, was one of them. He wrote glowing reports about the Prussian model and pushed hard to bring it stateside. And it worked. By the late 1800s, the Prussian structure was being quietly installed into American schools, coast to coast. But here's where it gets real dark, real fast. Because it wasn't just government reformers who wanted this. It was money. Old money. The kind of money that doesn't make the news. In 1902, John D. Rockefeller's General Education Board was founded with one stated mission: to promote education in the United States. Sounds great on paper, but Frederick Gates, the man Rockefeller hired to run it, wrote something in 1913 that should have set off alarm bells across the whole country. He wrote that the goal was not to produce scholars or independent thinkers, but to produce people who would do what they were told in the context of a larger industrial system. He literally said they didn't want the children thinking for themselves. He put it in writing, and nobody batted an eye, because the money was too good, and the system was already rolling. Around the same time, Andrew Carnegie was pouring cash into shaping what got taught in American universities. His foundation pushed hard for standardized curricula, standardized testing, and a model of education that looked more like job training than actual learning. The goal wasn't to produce curious human beings. The goal was to produce reliable workers for the factories, the mills, and the mines that men like Carnegie and Rockefeller owned. They didn't build the school system out of the goodness of their hearts. They built it because an educated, obedient, compliant workforce was worth more to them than gold. And here's the part that should make your blood boil. It worked. Perfectly. The system sorted kids into tracks, college prep for some, vocational training for others, and told each group that their track was based on merit, based on their own natural ability. It wasn't. Studies going back decades show that which track a kid ended up in had far more to do with their zip code and their parents' income than anything else. The sorting wasn't academic. It was economic. The system wasn't measuring your potential. It was predetermining your place. Now here's where the science comes in, because this isn't just a history lesson. This is about what that system did to your actual brain. Developmental psychologists have known for decades that children learn best through curiosity-driven exploration, through play, through hands-on problem solving, through questions they actually care about. It's not even controversial. It's settled science. The human brain ages 5 through 12 is wired for deep, passionate, self-directed learning. That's the biological default. And the school system took that default and systematically beat it out of you.
Not with malice necessarily, just with bells and desks and permission slips, and the creeping daily message that curiosity was fine as long as it stayed inside the lines of what was on the test. Sir Ken Robinson, one of the most watched TED Talk speakers of all time, spent decades arguing that schools don't just fail to nurture creativity, they actively destroy it. He documented how kids who enter school as wildly imaginative, question-everything little humans leave 12 years later having been trained to color inside the lines and wait to be told what to do next. And the data backs him up hard. Studies measuring divergent thinking, the ability to come up with multiple creative solutions to a problem, show that children score at genius level before school. By the time they graduate high school, the vast majority score average or below. School didn't develop their minds, it narrowed them. And here's the kicker that nobody in your civics class ever mentioned. The compulsory attendance laws that made all of this mandatory, that made it literally illegal to keep your kid home, weren't passed to protect children. They were passed to protect the system. The United States today spends more money per student than almost any other country on earth. And by international academic measures, American kids rank around the middle of the pack, behind countries that spend a fraction of what we do. The money isn't the problem. The model is the problem, because the model was never designed to produce the best possible human beings. It was designed to produce the most useful possible workers. And those are not the same thing. They have never been the same thing. Here's what really messes with your head when you sit with all of this. Every single thing you believe about your own intelligence was shaped by that system. If you struggled in school, you probably still carry some part of the belief that you're not that smart. Intelligence is curiosity. It's creativity. It's the ability to ask questions nobody else thought to ask and to sit with the discomfort of not knowing the answer yet. School didn't measure any of that. You spent 12 years of your life, the most neurologically explosive, creative, wonder-filled years a human being gets, sitting in a system that was copy-pasted from a Prussian military model, funded by industrialists who needed compliant workers, and legally enforced by a government that called it education. And at the end of it, they handed you a diploma and told you the debt you were about to take on to continue your education was totally worth it. You were the product. You were always the product. And you funded the system that was built to limit you. And you did it without ever being told that was the deal. Tonight, somewhere in America, that kid is still sitting in that classroom, staring at that clock. And nobody's going to tell them what you now know. Unless you do.